One bullet can change the course of history, and in the summer of 1914, that bullet was fired in Sarajevo. On June 28, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, arrived in the bustling streets with his wife Sophie by his side. They were there on what seemed like a ceremonial visit, unaware that shadows of rebellion lingered around them. Among the crowd, a 19-year-old nationalist carried a pistol and a burning desire to strike at the empire he despised. For the Archduke, it was meant to be another public appearance, but destiny had prepared a darker script. The assassination wasn't just the death of a man. It was the spark that lit the fire of the deadliest conflict humanity had ever seen, changing the fate of empires and rewriting history forever. Imagine a plot so poorly executed that it seemed doomed to fail, yet it still managed to shatter the world. That was the reality of the Black Han's plan to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand. A group of young nationalists, barely more than boys, lined the streets of Sarajevo armed with bombs and pistols. One threw a grenade, but it bounced off the Archduke's car and exploded under the wrong vehicle, injuring bystanders. Instead, chaos erupted. Smoke filled the streets, and the assassins scattered, convinced their mission had collapsed. Franz Ferdinand, shaken but alive, continued with his visit, unaware that fate was far from finished. What should have been remembered as a failed attempt at rebellion was only the beginning of a sequence of missteps and coincidences that would ignite the greatest war the world had ever seen. Sometimes history doesn't turn on grand strategy, but on the smallest twist of fate. After surviving the bombing, Franz Ferdinand decided to visit the hospital to comfort those who were wounded. His driver, unfamiliar with Sarajevo streets, made a wrong turn onto Franz Joseph Street. As the car slowed to reverse, it stalled, completely exposed right outside a cafe where a frustrated Gavrilo Princip happened to be standing. Just moments earlier, Princip had abandoned hope, believing the mission had failed. Now, as if destiny itself delivered the Archduke into his hands, he found his target a few feet away. The chance mistake of a driver and the unlucky stop of a car placed two lives and the peace of Europe on a knife's edge. That single wrong turn transformed a failed plot into the opening act of World War I. He hadn't planned it. He hadn't even believed it possible anymore. Gavrilo Princip stood outside a cafe, drained and defeated, replaying the chaos of the morning in his mind. The bombs had failed. His comrades had scattered, and the chance to strike at the empire seemed gone forever. But in a moment that feels almost scripted by fate, the Archduke's car stopped right in front of him, stalled and vulnerable. Princip froze for a heartbeat. Then instinct took over. He stepped forward, raised his pistol, and fired two shots that echoed through the streets of Sarajevo, one striking Franz Ferdinand, the other his wife Sophie. The city erupted in panic, but the damage was already done. In those seconds of chance and action, a young man with shaky hands had pulled the trigger that hurled the world into war. The gunshots in Sarajevo should have been the end of a tragic local story, but instead they cracked open the fragile peace of Europe. Within hours, shockwaves rippled through Vienna, where Hungary viewed the assassination not just as murder, but as an attack on its empire. Fueled by anger and national pride, leaders seized the moment to punish Serbia, where the plotters had ties. But in the rush for retribution, they overlooked how entangled the continent had become. What might have stayed a Balkan conflict escalated into a diplomatic crisis as ultimatums were drafted and accusations flew. The Archduke's death gave Austria-Hungary the excuse it had been waiting for to crush Serbian nationalism, but the consequences stretched far beyond the Balkans. What began with two bodies in Sarajevo now threatened to pull entire nations into the abyss of war. Like a row of dominoes toppling one after another, Europe's alliances turned one assassination into a global inferno. Austria, Hungary, emboldened by Germany's promise of support, declared war on Serbia. Russia, bound by ties of Slavic kinship, mobilized to protect Serbia. That single move alarmed Germany, which in turn declared war on Russia. And then, almost instantly, on France as well, Britain, sworn to defend Belgium's neutrality, entered the fight when German troops marched through its borders. In less than 6 weeks, what began with a teenager's pistol in Sarajevo had ignited a war spanning continents. Each nation thought it was defending its honor, its allies, or its security, but together they created the deadliest chain reaction the world had ever seen. The tangled web of promises and threats ensured that no one could step back once the first stone had fallen. Gavrilo Princip never dreamed of changing the world. He only dreamed of striking back at an empire. Yet history played its cruel trick. His bullets, meant as a symbol of rebellion, became the spark that engulfed millions of lives. His name lives on not as a liberator, but as the young man whose actions, combined with accidents, pride, and alliances, set humanity on the path to World War I. The irony is haunting a frustrated teenager standing outside a cafe, unintentionally opened the darkest chapter of the 20th century. It reminds us how fragile peace can be, and how one moment, one decision can reshape the destiny of nations. So here's the question. If one wrong turn could trigger a world war, what lessons should we take today to stop history from repeating itself? Think about it. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of history.